Welcome to the 2021 Capitals Officials Association Baseball Rules Clinic number 4. I'm your host, Greg Stanley. The rules test opens Monday, March 29th. Unlimited time, 5 breaks allowed. It is an open rulebook test with 100 questions. You can access it through NCHS AA Central Hub on Arbiter. Must score a 75 or better to be eligible for regular season games, and must score an 80 or better to be eligible for postseason games. Please remember to keep your blockouts up to date in Arbiter from now through the end of May, potentially into the 1st of June. When you do receive assignments, please accept or decline them through Arbiter, and make sure you continue to contact your partner by either email, text, or call. Again, reminding you scrimmages are very limited this year. Scrimmages will be on self-assigned through Arbiter, and when we do have scrimmages, all umpires will need to be in full uniform with full equipment for all scrimmages. A slight change to the on-field clinic. We are going to condense it down and have one on-field clinic, and hopefully it will be we'll be able to get it at Millbrook. I've been in contact with Coach James at Millbrook, and we're trying to work out the dates and the details of that. Hopefully when we get that worked out, all umpires working less than 4 years with Ron should attend. It's great opportunities to learn on the field, review on the field, practice mechanics and positioning, for Ron to see you work, other evaluators to see you work. Please remember to wear your uniform, gray slacks, and black or blue shirt or pullover, and bring your mask for plate and cage work. The start of the season, private schools, again, will start late February to early March. Public schools, first contest is April 26, last contest June 11. First round playoffs June 15, second round playoffs June 17, third round playoffs June 19, regionals June 22nd, and the championship series is June 25 and 26. All right, the major rule that we're going to cover during this clinic is rule number 6, pitching. There's going to be a lot of verbiage going on with this rule, so let's not get lost in the words that we read and then we hear. Article number 1 is talking about the position of the pitcher's feet. And the position of the pitcher's feet will determine whether he will pitch from the wind-up or the set position. He shall take his sign from the catcher with his pivot foot in contact with the pitcher's plate. And then the pitching regulations begin when he intentionally contacts the pitcher's plate. Turning the shoulders to check runners while in contact with the pitcher's plate in the set position is legal. Turning the shoulders after bringing the hands together during or after the stretch is a balk. So again, the difference there between the word set and the word stretch, if he has not brought his hands together, he's pivot foot on the rubber, he's getting a signal from the catcher. At that point, he can turn his shoulders to check a runner at any base, but when he begins the motion of bringing his hands together, once his hands come together, he can no longer turn his shoulders to check a runner at any base. If he does, that would then be called a balk. Rule 6, pitching, Section 1, Article 2 is the wind-up position. Pitcher's hands can be together in front of his body, or he could have both hands at his side, or he could have either hand in front of his body and the other hand at his side. After bringing his hands together in front of his body, if he chooses to do so, the next motion, other than disengaging from the pitcher's plate with his pivot foot, commits him to deliver a pitch to the batter in a continuous motion without interruption or alteration. So if he starts with his hands together, the next motion commits him to deliver a pitch. If he starts with his hands separate and he brings them together, he can adjust the ball to get a grip on the ball, but his next motion then commits him to deliver a pitch. The pitcher's non-pivot foot shall be in any position on or behind a line extending through the front edge of the pitcher's plate. During delivery, he may lift his non-pivot foot in a step forward, a step sideways, or in a step backward and then a step forward, but he shall not otherwise lift either foot. Right. The information you see on the screen now is a visual diagram of what is legal for the pitcher's feet from the wind-up position. So we're looking at a right-handed pitcher. His pivot foot is his right foot. The bottom of the screen would be in the direction toward home plate. So with the wind-up position, he can have his pivot foot must be engaged in the rubber. His non-pivot foot can be on the rubber. That is legal. Right. The picture you see here, pivot foot on the rubber. His non-pivot foot is still touching that edge of the front of the rubber, so that is legal. This is a good example of an illegal wind-up position. His pivot foot is engaged with the rubber, but his non-pivot foot is completely in front of the front edge of the rubber. It's called the hybrid position, but it's an illegal position. When we see that, we need to address it, hopefully in a non-punitive way. The way I try to handle it is starting pitcher taking his 8 warm-up pitches. I'm watching that, and if I see something that looks borderline, I walk out to the mound so I can get a closer look, and I'll have that conversation with the pitcher. I need you to square your feet up so that your non-pivot foot is at least touching the front plane of the rubber. The other coach sees me address it. I haven't had a question about it being illegal for the duration of that game yet. So I think that's a good way to handle it. Right. Rule number 6, continuing with the section 1, article 3, talks about the set position. The pitcher shall have the ball in either his glove or pitching hand. He cannot have them together, and you'll see that in a few minutes. His pitching hand shall be down at his side or behind his back. He cannot have his pitching hand and glove together when taking his signal from the set position. Before starting his delivery, he shall stand with his entire non-pivot foot in front of a line extending through the front edge of the pitcher's plate, and with his pivot foot in contact with or directly in front of and parallel to the pitcher's plate. So some of the mounds that the kids will be pitching off of, the directly in front of part of that statement to the pitcher's plate, if there's a hole or not a good place for him to have his pivot foot, there can be a slight amount of separation between his foot and his rubber, but it cannot be to the point that you judge it where he gains an advantage with distance toward the plate. His foot shall be parallel, and we'll see that an example of not being parallel on a future slide. He shall go to the set position without interruption and in one continuous motion. He shall come to a complete and discernible stop with the ball in both hands in front of his body and his glove at or below his chin. That's the part that we get most coaches chirping about a balk. Now, a lot of coaches see pitchers change up their timing, and as soon as they don't have the exact same timing, the exact same rhythm, they want us to balk the pitcher. He's running through it, Greg. He's doing his job as a pitcher, and he's not being consistent on purpose. So really look for a pitcher coming to a complete and discernible stop. If he bounces and then goes, then I balk him on it. If he brings his hand together and I see a moment where I see the hand stop and I can start thinking he stopped, to me, that my judgment, that is a discernible stop. So yes, we do need to look out for running right through it and for bouncing, but we also don't need to let the coach railroad us and talk us into calling a balk that really might not be there. Continuing with the set position. During these preliminary motions and during the set position until a delivery motion occurs, the pitcher may turn on his pivot foot or lift it in a jump turn to step with the non-pivot foot toward a base while throwing or feinting to a base, or he may lift his pivot foot in a step backward off the pitcher's plate, which must be in or partially within the 24-inch length of the pitcher's plate. That's a whole lot of verbiage going on that just simply means after he comes set, he can do what's called a wheel move or a jump turn to, if it's a right-handed pitcher, to attempt to pick off at first base. In order to change to the wind-up position, he must first clearly step backwards off of the pitcher's plate with his pivot foot. A couple of diagrams here again. We have a right-handed pitcher. His pivot foot is engaged with the rubber, and it is parallel with the rubber. His non-pivot foot is in front of the front edge of the rubber. Legal. Right, the next picture is still legal. His pivot foot is not completely within the 24-inch length of the rubber, but a rule changed, I think, 2 years ago now allows the pivot foot, as long as it is partially in contact with the rubber and parallel to the rubber. So, and just notice that pivot foot is still parallel to the rubber. The non-pivot foot is still in front of the rubber. Legal position. Again, right-handed pitcher, pivot foot in front of the rubber, parallel to the rubber. The non-pivot foot, although it is open up, and you'll see more of this at especially the varsity level, a right-handed pitcher, they will open it up so that they can get a better look at the runner on first base if it's first only, sometimes first and third. But what you see on the screen is still legal. And again, what makes it legal? The pivot foot is engaged with the rubber, is parallel to the rubber, and the non-pivot foot is complete or is in front of the front edge of the rubber. This is probably going to be your most common example of a non-legal set position. What makes this not legal is the pivot foot is not parallel to the rubber. All right, we're continuing with the set position. The ball is dead immediately when an illegal pitch occurs. If there is no runner on base, then a BALL ball is awarded to the batter. If there is a runner on base, then a BALK balk is called, and all runners will advance one base. Rule 6, pitching, section number 2. Article 1 will discuss some but not all illegal acts. So illegal acts include bringing the pitching hand in contact with the mouth without distinctly wiping off the pitching hand before it touches the ball. So there's a difference there in licking the fingers versus blowing on the hands. So I always caution coaches about that, particularly in cold weather games. I will remind them it's okay to blow on their hands. Just make sure they're off the rubber when they do that. But if they lick their hands, then we must see them wipe it off. And again, if they make a motion, they lick their hands and then they bump their hand on the side of their hip on their pants or on their shirt, or to me that's making the effort of wiping it off. As long as they don't lick their hands and then immediately go to the ball, then I'm not going to reach for that end of the stick. All right. Again, illegal acts include wearing any items on the hands, wrists, or arms that may be distracting to the batter. We are the judgment of that. Wearing or placing tape, bandages, or other foreign materials on the fingers or palm of the pitching hand that could come in contact with the ball. So no band-aids, no tape, nothing on their pitching hand, fingers or palm that could come in contact with the ball. They cannot wear a glove or a mitt that includes white or gray. And the last one on this slide, they cannot wear exposed undershirt sleeves that are white or gray. Continuing with section 2, the number of warm-up pitches to start and between innings. The starting pitcher is allowed 8 warm-up pitches. I have a very consistent routine with that. I usually take 3 warm-up pitches as if a right-handed batter is at bat. I take 3 warm-up pitches as if a left-handed batter is at bat. And during those 6 pitches, I'm starting a conversation with the catcher. I let him know what I'm thinking about during a game. I mean, foul balls, pass balls. If there's a borderline pitch and I ball it, I say get it back to the pitcher, and I'll talk with you on what I'm seeing. As long as a catcher does not throw me under the bus, I love having a conversation with catchers throughout the game that allows us to work together good. So those 6 pitches gives me a chance. Also, if it's a pitcher that has a different kind of motion or a different kind of pitch, it gives me a chance to see, and it gives the catcher a chance to tell me what he may throw. Oftentimes we'll have catchers tell me, well, Greg, you're going to see fastball from different arm angles. You're going to see curve, slider, and change. And he'll throw any of them in all counts. So that gives me an idea of understanding what I'm expecting, what I'm gonna see. After that 6th pitch, then I step out from behind the catcher, and I verbally, I try to do it loudly, verbally announce 2 more pitches to the fielders, and then I turn and show 2 fingers to the on-deck batter so that they are ready to come up to bat after the catcher throws down. Each replacement pitcher is allowed 8 warm-up pitches. While the replacement pitcher is taking his warm-up pitches, I do not watch pitches. I stand roughly at the edge of the circle, either at the first baseline or the third baseline. But at that point, I no longer watch pitches. I only watch pitches with the starting pitcher on both teams. And again, to get my mind into the game right then, hopefully it already is, but to get it really focused on seeing pitches and to have that conversation with the catcher. If a pitcher is removed due to injury and the replacement pitcher needs more than 8 warm-up pitches, then he can have them. Well, the penalty is the replaced pitcher cannot return to pitch for the remainder of the game. Right. Each returning pitcher is allowed up to 5 warm-up pitches completed within 1 minute timed from the 3rd out of the previous half inning. Now, that's what the rule book says. We're not going to put them on an actual clock, but as a plate guy, if I see the pitcher and the catcher being very delayed, I'll have the conversation with the catcher first. I need you and the pitcher to get out here and get your warm-up pitches, and if they continue to slow down, then I start taking away warm-up pitches. Once I take away a warm-up pitch and they're cut down to 4 pitches, they usually get the message real quick to hustle up and get out. So again, each returning pitcher is allowed 5 warm-up pitches. All right, really important note, it is the plate umpire's responsibility to monitor warm-up pitches and announce when there are 2 warm-up pitches remaining. Every half inning through the entire game, we need to be on top of that and not have conversations with players and coaches and not do things that takes our attention away from monitoring that. That is a very important game management situation, because we lose a lot of time if we don't monitor that, and pitchers end up getting 6 and 7 and 8 pitches every inning. We end up losing 15 minutes for the duration of that game. So plate umpire, pitch 1, pitch 2, pitch 3, My mechanic and my system for that is when the pitcher receives that ball back from the catcher after the third warm-up pitch, I like to make eye contact with him and show him two fingers, and most time they'll nod their head, okay, acknowledging that. I announce verbally so the defense can hear that there's two pitches remaining, and then I pivot and look at the on-deck batter to let him be aware there's two pitches remaining. Even if the catcher's not out there yet, I'm still going to do that same system. The guy warming him up oftentimes will say, "I'm not the catcher," and I will say, "I know," and that's okay. So, and then let's carry that a little bit more. We have another catcher warming him up because our regular catcher is not out yet. And throw the fourth pitch, he returns it back to the pitcher. At that point, I will tell that the guy warming him up is, don't take the fifth pitch. Leave the fifth pitch for the regular catcher so he has one to throw down. Even if the catcher's not ready, don't let them continue to have more than 5 warm-up pitches. Rule 6, pitching, section number 2, article 4, is about balks. First and foremost, no coach likes a balk umpire. So let's focus on getting the obvious balk calls, and let's not try to get that obscure nitpicky balk call. So what constitutes a balk? Well, it is a balk when a runner is on base and the pitcher feints toward the batter or first base, or any dropping of the ball and the ball does not cross a foul line. So the big thing about that is if the pitcher is still engaged with the rubber, he cannot fake a pitch and he cannot fake to first base. Also, if the pitcher is engaged with the rubber and he drops the baseball and it does not cross the foul line, then it is a balk. If it does cross the foul line, then it is a ball on the pitch. If the pitcher steps back off the rubber and disengages from the rubber, he is no longer considered a pitcher, so then he can fake a throw toward first base. Right, the second bullet, if the pitcher fails to step with his non-pivot foot directly toward a base, occupied or unoccupied, when throwing or feinting there in an attempt to put out or drive back a runner, or if he throws or feints to any unoccupied base when it is not an attempt to put out or drive back a runner. So the first part of that, stepping directly toward a base, typically comes from your left-hander trying to pick off move to first base. So he needs to step with his foot and with his body in a direction toward first base. That doesn't mean he has to go directly toward first, but he needs to go in that direction. So nowhere in the Federation rulebook does it indicate the 45 line as a line of demarcation. That's typically what umpires use to help them judge it. But if his body is going in the direction toward first base and he steps in that direction, he's legal. If his body goes in the direction toward home, or if he steps in the direction toward home and he throws to first, that is now illegal and that becomes a balk. Right, the unoccupied part of it, it is legal for a pitcher to throw or fake a throw to an unoccupied base as long as it is a legitimate attempt to put out or drive back a runner. Right, so very, very few coaches realize that aspect of it. If a pitcher throws or fakes to an unoccupied base and it is, in our judgment, not an attempt to put out or drive back a runner, then that's when it becomes a balk. The third bullet, if the pitcher fails to pitch to the batter in a continuous motion immediately after any movement of any part of the body, such as he habitually uses in his delivery. Right. So that statement just simply means that he can't kind of start and stop. That's where that comes in. Once if he's in the wind-up position with runners on base and he starts his motion and stops, it's a balk. If he's in the set position, if he starts and stops, it's a balk. So once he starts his motion to pitch, he must do so in a continuous motion, or it would be a balk. Continuing a balk. It is a balk if a pitcher fails to pitch to the batter when the entire non-pivot foot passes behind the perpendicular plane of the back edge of the pitcher's plate, except when feinting or throwing to second base in an attempt to put out a runner. Again, that typically comes from your left-hander trying to not really deceive the runner, but trying to simulate a pitching motion and then throwing to first. But in order for him to completely break his non-pivot foot to completely pass behind the perpendicular plane of the back edge of the rubber, that is very difficult to do without his body getting really twisted. And if that occurs and he throws to first base, that's going to be one of those that's going to be pretty obvious that we can call. So again, that's another one where coaches don't know the full letter of the rule. They just simply think that if the foot goes goes to his pivot foot or to the rubber, it has to go completely behind the back edge of the rubber. Right, it is a balk while he is not touching the pitcher's plate. He makes any movement naturally associated with his pitch. That one doesn't happen very often, but if he's not engaged with the rubber and he starts any movement that's naturally associated with his pitch, then that becomes a balk. The third bullet that you see, it is a balk if he places his feet on or astride the pitcher's plate, or positions himself within approximately 5 feet of the pitcher's plate without having the ball. That typically comes in with the hidden ball trick. So in order for the hidden ball trick to be legal in Federation, the pitcher, a good rule of thumb to use is the dirt circle. He cannot, by the letter of the rule it says 5 feet. I'm not going to take a tape measure out to see what 5 feet is. So I typically use the mound or the dirt circle as my judgment. If he's not on the mound or the dirt circle, then he's not limited to having to have the ball, and the hidden ball trick is intact. Once he gets on that once he gets on that mound and he does not have the ball, and they are trying to do the hidden ball trick, then we have a potential balk there. In closing, please complete the attestation form at the following link to affirm you've watched this presentation, and that link can also be found in the description box below the video. Thank you for your time.